In the past decades, multiple movements regarding human rights have emerged around the world to advocate for issues such as education, health, environment, and world peace. Citizens from numerous countries and cultures have become more and more concerned about their rights. They have stood in fights, riots, and other protests to guarantee the accomplishment of rules to protect their integrity as human beings. The integration of the expression human rights is common in almost every modern movement to reflect the multiple issues that people around the globe are worried about and willing to mobilize actions for significant social and political changes. But it wasn't always that way. The concern about the human rights have increased since 1948 when was established the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations. In general terms, the document, for the first time in history, articulated the rights and freedoms to which every human being is equally entitled, regardless of his race, culture, political preference, or more. In the first article, the Declaration stresses that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in spirit of brotherhood. Besides the universal character of the Declaration, some gaps don't let its ambition come true. That's what this video explains next. After the atrocities of the World War II, including the Holocaust, the nuclear bombarding in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, as well as the forced enlistment of African people to the war, the United Nations had the huge task of avoiding that these types of disrespect kept haunting the human race. Therefore, in 1948, the UN General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, also known as the UDHR. Any international committee led by Eleanor Roosevelt assembled 30 articles with principles that would give a guide to the human dignity in the modern world. Differently from the previous legal frameworks and principles concerning human rights, for instance, the English Bill of Rights and Magna Carta, the UDHR is attached to the principle of universality. It means all the principles are applied to every person in the world, and the principle of inalienability, which means that they cannot be negotiated or neglected by any person. With that spirit, the Declaration is packed with the principles of life and liberty, education, health, right of employment, nationality, marriage, non discrimination, and freedom of movement or residence. In general, every aspect that surrounds the human being. The promotion of these rights was primarily linked to the specialized agency of the UN. For instance, the World Health Organization, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, and many others. In the recent years, numerous human rights movements have emerged globally, addressing various issues and advocating for the protection and expansion of the rights for different groups. But if the UDHR grants the universality of rights, why are there still many violations of human rights? Why there are still wars, genocides, poverty, and racial discrimination? That's due to the missing piece of the declaration. The main problem of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is the lack of binding authority. It is not a hard law and cannot force nations to follow their principles. While it sets out the fundamental principles, it relies on voluntary compliance by states and lacks the enforcement mechanisms. It is a declaration, not a treaty, meaning it does not have the same binding legal force as international conventions or national laws. Countries might take into consideration if they are willing to. Therefore, even after the proclamation in 1948, the world has faced multiple issues such as the Rwanda genocide, the war in Gaza, and terrorism in many Asian and African countries. While the UDHR condemns the actions that harm the society, it does not have the enforcement mechanism to prevent or stop these atrocities during wars or other conflicts. Wars often lead to massive human rights violations, including loss of life, displacement, and destruction of property. The lack of authority is visible when human rights don't get along with the principle of state sovereignty. Many states resist external intervention in their internal affairs, even when the human rights are being violated. It's claimed that the UDHR does not directly address some contemporary realities, such as the digital privacy, climate change, and rights of LGBTQ plus individuals. So, Is it safe to say that the UDHR is becoming obsolete in the contemporary world? The Universal Declaration of Human Rights has always been supported by activists, movements, and organizations to allow them see the light of the day. Eminent people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela are referenced to the personalities that have given their lives for cause of human rights. Even the process of African decolonization supported by United Nations was possible through the engagement of many African leaders. So no, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is not obsolete. It's the main reference of multiple movements and realities that come after the proclamation in 1948. Either way, support the modern causes to protect human rights in each sector, renewing constantly the content of the 1948 Declaration. Therefore, we have modern movements like Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, and LGBTQ rights movement, now available in more than 360 languages. The Declaration is the most translated document in the world, a testament to the global nature and reach. It has become a yardstick by which we measure what's right and what's wrong.